Okay, well, I know I have a question. Does anybody else have questions? Sam and Mark.
Yeah, we have that short list of questions. If you guys haven't taken a look at it, I think it's pretty simple stuff. I just don't know how to do it. So I guess, should I just start going for them, or
Yeah, let's start taking a look at them, because I think it might also be a nice chance for us to see if we can try and answer some of those, just as they come up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess then the first one. So I linked the PDF. I'm sorry if that was a big message. I linked the PDF just because that's like specifically for each like section on our form what we're trying to fix. But I put them into these general categories. So the first one, insert text boxes for multiple inputs as opposed to single line text fields. Sometimes it asks for, what job do you work, something like that. And if people have more than one job, only one text field seems a little bit limiting for those people. So I was wondering if there's a way, instead of having like a single space text box or text line, to have like a whole, like, you can write a paragraph or something like that. You'd be able to say more.
It's a really good question. So, because yes, there is a way to get line text input, but I don't know. Does anyone have a thought about Sam's question about whether we should use multi-line for multiple jobs?
I think we should use addendum.
Well, it depends. It depends on what if you have a docx, then the space will expand to what you want.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So if you have a PDF though, there's only a limited amount of space that is in the PDF to write to write the text, in which case you would add an addenda. And there's different ways to handle having multiple jobs. It depends what needs to be described about the job. You could have a list of jobs and their addresses. It depends what the question needs out of the job information, right? And it depends if you want to direct the user to give certain information as opposed to other information.
I think that's a good answer, and I think maybe we could look at it for a second if you have it up on your screen, Sam. Think a little bit about the best way to handle that, which may end up being more involved than you thought. But that's the way it goes when you ask a question sometimes.
Definitely, yeah. Here I can.
You don't necessarily have to dive into the whole thing here, but we could just look at that because take that in order.
I will share my screen. Where are we? Right over here. Okay, so here's the form. Can everybody see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Here's the form, and then there's something like, if from employment list your occupation, and this is obviously one that I filled in, I just put in a bunch of nonsense. If from the employment list your occupation and employer's name and address, this current way that we have it when we ask the question, that's just one single line. And this is definitely implying that there is definitely more than one job or occupation that, the user could have. So you'd add one, and then the next question is add the name and address, which is over here. And so I'm kind of having a hard time trying to figure out how to say, like, all right, well, I work at, these two places. Here's this name, here's this address, and here's this name, and here's the way that this address corresponds to that second one. So maybe if this was all just one big text box and we could give instructions on how to like write it, I think it might be a little bit easier.
I think on that front, what we've done is we have one big text box for something like that, and we have different questions, but they actually all, I don't know if concatenate's the right word, but they all end up in the same text box. And when I say we, Lance did that, so I'm not too sure how.
Yeah, you can add them together. Certainly, you can have like the strings, right? The text that you have them fill out several of them, and then you add all the text together to make one input.
That might end up being the wrong level of detail for Sam right now, who's just started this project.
Sure.
I think the important thing to say is, Sam, you might, rather than having one question where you ask someone to answer multiple things, we might break it into multiple questions. So we can ask a list. We're not, one of the great things about running an online interview is that you're not bound by the way it looks right now. You can rearrange the questions into a more logical order. And here this is asking for like one thing, but we could ask someone one at a time, like tell us about job, tell us about how much you make from that job, and then we can put the things into the right place on the PDF after we've asked it in a more natural way. So I always think of it as like, how would you ask that information if you are sitting face to face with the client? And that's something maybe, you know, you may or may not have a lot of experience with doing, but you could think of what would be a natural way for you to ask it.
Yeah, so the best way that I could think of, but I know this is way above my level, my coding ability, is to kind of have its own screen and say, you know, where do you work? And then have the address there, and then have another prompt at the end that says, do you work at another place? If yes, it just kind of repeats it and keeps on printing it down the line. Do you think that would be something doable?
Yeah, that sounds like exactly the right way to ask it that I would think of too. So,
Okay, cool.
and yes, we can definitely do that.
Awesome. Okay. So I don't really know how to troubleshoot that. If anybody has any line that they could drop me in GitHub or something like that, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, so what you would be doing is working with a list. So that's the keyword you'd want to know. You'd be gathering a list of jobs.
Okay, a list of jobs.
Yeah, one of the training videos we did a few weeks ago now, I think, covered how to work with those. Let's scroll down a little bit more and let's just take a look. So some of this, yeah, okay, right to see.
This is another area that I think is the question I've been kind of posting the most, which is
Doing the total, right? Okay. And then property, bank accounts, those are going to be lists too, probably debts. If you've already written out questions, or if you already have questions for the individual expenses, you don't have to with those like they're a list, but it might end up helping you.
Okay.
To kind of keep things organized.
Okay, so sounds like I'm just going to be watching. I'll watch the lists video specifically, see if I can wrap my head around it, and then try and just integrate that into the code.
Quentin, don't we have some samples that he could look at as well?
Yeah, so Lily, I don't think is on the call today, but she had done her financial statement, so she would be a good person to talk to. And I don't know, Carolyn, if you're thinking about the Social Security stuff that we did, which had another financial statement.
No, I was just thinking to go to GitHub and look at some of the questions where they already are. I think that sometimes that's really helpful because they're specific. I mean, it might be Social Security, it might be Lily's. I haven't looked at the code for Lily's. Actually, never mind looking at Lily's because I just looked at it this morning. As far as I can tell, she only has one employer, so forget that suggestion.
Oh, okay.
But don't we have multiple employers on plaintiff confidential information form?
Yep, we do.
So
yep.
you might look at Sam, you might look at go to the GitHub repository 209A virtual court, MA virtual court, and look at the interview for the plaintiff confidential information form, and I think it's there for multiple employers, and then you could use it for other things. I may be wrong. That may not. I haven't looked at it carefully enough to see if that fits what you need.
I also there is a sample in the DocIncome package that we did for the Social Security interview. So that I haven't tested to see if any later changes make it so it won't work as is, but here's the sample that you could use. And let me just see if we can run it. And it might be the wrong level of detail for you, but you don't have to necessarily follow that exact outline is my point, I guess.
And what do you need for employer? You need what do you need for, what are the details you need for employer?
It's just, it asks, what is your name and address? The name and address of your occupation.
That's all, okay.
Yeah.
This does way more and you wouldn't want to use all of it, so. To show you how you could do it. You're not stuck with it, but like it actually relates to your other question about how you can do math, because it will help you if you did use it. It would help math at the end. I think it shows in the sample how to do it. But sometimes like reading someone else's code and learning how to change yours to do the exact same thing isn't what you need. So I think we can take a little bit of time to go into your other questions too. So I think I can get through this pretty quickly.
And also, isn't it not just the YAML, but also on the docx how you do a repeat, how you.
I didn't do any.
Right. I just realized that he needs two pieces: the YAML as well as the displaying it on the.
Let me just see if this is the right one. Okay. Yes. So this just shows how to like collect everything basically. And we're using like the possibility to do hourly or not. And then also like the time period, because sometimes people don't know how to translate it to whatever the form says. I don't know if the form says, like, does it say monthly income or annual income?
I think the supplement is monthly, isn't it?
So this would let you translate it from one frequency to another. So if they check every 2 weeks or twice a month, it would help you figure out how to average that the right way into the monthly amount.
It's great. The affidavit of indigency asks for weekly income and the supplement asks for monthly.
Of course.
To make it easy for users.
So you could, and this like basically here, I can add another job and then it will do the math. Maybe this is an hourly job and at $15 an hour and I work 35 hours a week. And it's translated that into the right. So that might be really helpful to save you some time at the expense of reading someone else's, learning how it fits together. So that's always a trade-off versus doing it yourself.
Yeah, this looks great. This would help a lot.
So that sample, I put the sample that is actually the document, but this test file is what I linked in the chat. The test file is called, I'll link that one too. Directly. This is already available on the same servers that are in the virtual court repository. So you should be able to just run, it's its own standalone package that's included. I think we're already using it for something. So you'd be able to just start doing, you don't have to do any like special installation or anything. You just start playing around with those features and seeing how they work. Okay, but let's look at some of the things that you asked separately too. So I think a good thing for us to do that everyone's running into or has done is the yes, no in two ways. One is like for changing the order of questions, and the other one that you ask here is how can we have a yes, no that's not two separate checkboxes. So why don't, if you don't mind, if we can share your screen again, if you have the code up, we can kind of work through those first, and then we can get back to get totals.
I was also thinking we might want to check in with other people if they had questions also. I mean, or is this the agenda for today? I don't know. Maybe I missed that. I'm sorry.
Well, I think that's a good point. After we get through the yes, no, I think that would be a good transition point to see what other questions people have. Okay, so let's go to one of those questions. And so what happens is our wizard, it generated code that looks like just like what you have here. So it's two separate checkboxes for yes and no. But probably that's not a really good style to ask the questions. Anyone have like a different idea for how Sam might change these questions to make it more natural? I think a few people have done this. So like Mia, I think I helped you with that earlier, and you probably helped other people.
So are you saying that, is it more like, are you a homeowner? And then it'll be radio buttons, yes, no. Is that what you?
Yeah, that is what I was thinking of. What would take a minute to explain that a little bit more to Sam, Dave?
Yeah. So basically, instead of having these as two separate fields, you would instead have it as one question saying, are you a homeowner? And then there'd be two radio buttons, one being yes, one being no, because it's binary. You either own the home or you don't. So you know the difference between checkboxes and radio buttons, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I'm just trying to remember now. Is it data type yes, no, radio?
You got it in one.
But I can't remember how you put both the variables there.
Yeah,
Just the
so
one
there are
variable.
a lot of choices. So start with making the change that you just pointed out. So we're changing the data type to yes, no, radio. So where would Sam do that?
Yeah, just there, right? Just add in radio. So you just, yeah.
Yep.
No. Yeah.
But where might you put a question mark? Yeah, you're on the right track, Sam. So where do you think, how would you rephrase line 400? What would you have to change to make that question make more sense now?
Would it just be, are you a homeowner?
Yeah. I mean, I would get more active, like maybe do you own your home? Do you own a home?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Just keeping in mind, I'm looking at characters right there, so avoid passive voice.
Yell in passive voice.
Passive voice is to be avoided at all.
Okay. Ah, nice.
And now we no longer need lines 410 and 411, right?
Right.
So what happens? You just delete those, and then do you change anything in the attachment code?
Yes, that's exactly what I would do next.
And so that's actually the fix that Michelle initially suggested when you say you will change it and basically change the logic, so it'll be in the attachment code. It's not. If you scroll up to the attachment code, then maybe I can explain what. Down, yeah. And remember, when you change something in one attachment block, you need to change it in the other. Okay, so I think it's petitioners, or is it users?
Well, it all this was an issue that we had where everything.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, but it works better when you type in users. We just haven't gone through and scraped it all. I think.
Okay, yeah. So the first one will be, I think it's just petitioners own homes, yes. And then when it's owns home, no, then you just change it to at where your cursor is a little bit to the right. You just say in front of the petitioners, between the curly brackets and the petitioners, you say not, and then you say space, and then you say owns home, yes. So you have two. No, sorry. After the, I'm pointing on my screen. After the owns home, no. You just change no. Yeah, thanks, Quentin. You just change no to yes.
Get a pointer too if you want, by the way.
So just change.
I know. I can never get it working properly though. Yeah. So you've got it's either owns home yes or it's not owns home yes.
Okay.
So you managed to do that without having both variables in the actual code itself, in the question box. Sorry. And that's how we solved ours.
Remember, you're not stuck with the way things are here right now. It's kind of like a draft you can change. And it's when you're just starting out, it's hard to know what things you can change, which things you can't. Mm-hmm. But obviously, you can do the same thing with all of these yes/no pairs. So for owning a car, I guess that might be the only other one. But,
this is the only other one. So should I change this one to the not yes as well?
Yeah.
And then you just, and okay, so the two things to remember is that you change it in the second attachment block as well, and then up at the top you want to just make that question match.
Gotcha.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so that's really the answer part. And hold on, now I'm trying to remember. Follow up to this. I think we've changed both parts that were in your question as two different numbers, right? Oh no, your other question was like, how do you change what the follow-up question? I bet someone on the call today has a good answer for that. So where do we go if we want to change the follow-up questions that happen? What are some different options that Sam would have?
Sorry, what was the question? If you want to change?
He wants to, if someone says car, maybe, as an example. Do you know what the question was that you were thinking you wanted to have a follow-up for, Sam?
For car?
That was one of the examples. But yeah, if someone says they have a car, ask the question, how much the car
we'd
is.
ask car, year, make, debt, value. Because
So it's like show if. Hi, Igor. There's some show if logic there, right? So if they answer yes, then you will show those 4 questions. I'm just thinking that it might, these are all on one question screen, right?
Yeah, so that's exactly why we're trying to cut it down, because this is all just screen. And
yeah, so then I would have like the home, because you can break it up. So you have the home question screen, and you have do you own a home, and then the show if would be the home value and the home debt, and then do you own a car? I think you just put those in the line, put those instead in line. Okay, bye, Michelle.
One thing I just want to, before you move on, is that you want to make sure that separator goes on the right side of the tape. You see that there on 419? That's part of the first.
Right here?
Yeah, it should go on line 413.
But I think 412 should come down to 419 because it's do you own a car?
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. The wrong range.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So you have it, basically you have a question for home and then you have a question for car. And then on the question for home, you can use the same logic in both, like as you've done now with the car. So the show if logic, basically, if the answer is yes, you do have a home, then you're going to want to show those inputs, home value and home debt.
Right, okay.
I'm going to refer to my learned colleagues on how to do that, though. I very confidently just...
No, you can do it. Maeve, you can do it.
Yeah, you've given the right keyword already, so...
Yeah.
So what's the first thing? So where would this go? Like, what line would we be looking at here? If he wanted to, let's say he wanted to hide home value, what line would the code that you just mentioned, the show if code, go?
I always put I think above, like so where the cursor is now, like 410.
But what is it that you want to show?
You only want to show do you own a home right now? And then if the answer is yes, then you show the lines 411 and 412.
So for example, home value is one that you would show or hide.
Yes.
Right. So the first thing you do is say home value, and then you decide if you want to show it or hide it. Right? What would if you put it above home value, what would it be? You see how you've got data type, yes, no, radio underneath, do you own a home?
Mm-hmm.
So it is, I think it's maybe if user owns home, yes, then show lines 411 and 412, something like that.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see what you're thinking. So that would be if we were in a Python block.
Okay.
It would be in that order. That's what but there is you use the word show if, which is its own keyword that can change just one field on the screen being shown or hidden. Caroline, I think you have a good answer if you want to.
I think that if you have the first line next to the dash under fields, you're going to start there, and that's your label and that's your variable, and then everything underneath, like your data type. What are some of the other characteristics that variables have? Like if you had it was a number and you'd have a minimum or a maximum, any characteristic that has to do with that variable, you would put it underneath.
Okay.
So the show if would go after home value.
So we might make a new line 411, basically. And we're going to indent it. So everything that's related has this indentation. So indent it so it matches the open quote for home value.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then show if here?
Yeah.
Yep. And there are a couple of variations on it, but yeah, go ahead, Caroline, sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead, Quentin, sorry. Got variations.
Oh, well, no, it's okay. We'll just do the first one. So what would Sam write there now?
I'm gonna move my thing out of the way. What's the one that you want to? What does it depend on?
It depends on if they say yes.
The 4 or 8.
If a particular variable is true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right,
that's it.
right.
That's it.
So how do you write that? Just equals.
It's like that. Because if it is, this is like kind of philosophical, isn't it? If it is, it's true.
Okay.
Right.
So would that be the correct orientation?
Yep.
And you do the same, and yeah, you did the same one. So the other thing about this is right now, if somebody were going to look at it, they would come to a question that said placeholder text. But the question is actually,
Do you own a home?
right. So you could put, that's your question. So I would put that in the, where it says question. Actually it says list assets. Somebody would come to it and would say list assets.
I think
Yeah,
I
well,
would put,
that's just left over from what it used to be.
because it was
Right,
initially
so
combined.
Yeah, so what I would do is just have the question be, do you own a home?
Do you?
Um,
Yeah.
And then
Line 404.
and I get rid of this. I don't think you need to explain what that means, owning a home. I think people understand that.
So does it work just fine if I go like this?
You have to put no label. It's 2 words, isn't it, Quentin? No label
Words.
and no quotes and a colon.
Gotcha.
By the way, we do put in quotes in our wizard generated interviews, but
But
generally you don't need.
Okay.
Oh,
And without, the quotes are kind of like a safety thing. There's some things that would cause problems, but it's pretty uncommon that you're going to have problems without the quotes.
and then you can take out your sub question unless you want to ask something about the home in particular.
I'll leave that in there just because Mark and I sometimes get ideas of what to toss in there. So at the very end, if we don't need it, I think we'll just scrape it out.
Okay.
I do the same thing.
Quentin, can you, Maeve's way of solving this was what I was thinking of as well. Can you describe a little more like why that was the wrong way or why that wasn't the right way
Thanks,
here?
Mariah.
Well, that's what I thought as well.
No, I think it's in a code block that you would put that in, right?
Yeah, you would put that in a code block. So
Because this is internal to the question, you do it this other way, right?
if you want to keep it on one screen, you would do it this way.
Okay.
And I don't know if I have like a fully thought out style guide reason for that, but like, well, I mean, does anybody else have any different thoughts on like when you would ask some information on 2 different screens versus on the same screen with something that shows or hides?
I think a lot of it's readability. I think it's a substance decision.
Yeah.
About
Mhm.
in a way, when you're talking to somebody, you know, if you say to somebody, tell me all your assets, that's a little overwhelming, isn't it? And think about, you know, how much shows up on your phone screen, those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's pretty much my first rule would be like, well, do these things make sense together as like an immediate follow-up? Would I ask that right away? And then if so, can it fit on the screen in a way that I can see everything and understand at once when everything is displayed? That's
Yeah,
basically
The home and car questions, I think, yeah, maybe the car, it is quite a few fields, but they're quite small fields. You're not having to write a lot. You know,
Yeah.
you're putting in just a little
And if you
bit.
think about it, it's like those are characteristics of the question.
Yes.
Whereas, do you want to do this? Or, you know, do you want to do this? If you actually want to do something, rather than asking somebody characteristics, there's sort of, you think about it, there's a lot more. That I'm just thinking that might be a situation where you would ask more questions. Like when you're talking to, it's sort of the mental idea of what you mean by follow-up. And I think if you think about it, if you're asking about one thing and it's characteristics of those things, whereas maybe if you're taking an action, that's a more complex. I'm just brainstorm. I mean, this is off the top of my head. But I'm just thinking those are the kinds of categories where you might ask more questions. Maybe if there's various steps, if you're going to make a decision to do something.
if you're going to start like a whole new process basically in your question gathering. If you're like switching.
Or even in your brain, like, you know, if the person. I'm just trying to categorize the way you would think about, not Python objects, but, you know, physical things that have specific attributes and characteristics versus actions you might take. I think that might.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, just in terms of consistency, I think that it should go, you've got home value, home debt, and then you've got car debt, car value. I think it should be.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
As Quentin's point is that I don't know, you're not limited to what the form has. Obviously, you know, that's a big thing. Like, you have an opportunity to improve the comprehension of the user at the end of the day.
Yeah, like actually debt one where you might want to think about changing that a bit. Because I'm not sure if and obviously we understand you just got this as a draft from the wizard that someone else had labeled. So we're
like, do you have a car loan? That's really what it's asking you, right? Do you have a car loan?
Like, do you owe money on your car?
Yeah, you might have another level there, I would think, of follow-up question. Like, you might say, do you have a car loan, before you say, how much is your car loan?
Yeah, so after value, saying like, this is completely separate. I guess year and make would be separate from that as well. So
you might even ask year and make first, because people, when you just think about when you talk to people, you probably ask them about the car first.
Right. Oh yeah, what's the actual car?
But then we add,
and then guys tell you what make and model it is, and girls tell you what color it is. Joke.
Mine's pearl white.
I don't know what it is. I have a white car.
So I guess then this would say, I'd have a new question that would be, do you I don't know, is there a loan?
No.
Do you owe any money on your car, right, or something like? Or is your car paid off? Have you paid your car off? Something that would be another way to ask it.
Right, because if you kind of assume a lot of people do have car loans, and especially if they're asking for affidavit of indigency,
yeah.
About phrasing it, you know, what's the natural default? You don't want people to have to think to answer the question, but try to think about defaults, but you don't want to override them with your guess of how they're going to answer. But yeah, so that particular choice can be tricky to figure out. When should I set a default for people in the way I ask it, and when should I leave it open? You're thinking time saving, and also what's the way that aids their comprehension of the question best.
Okay, so the way that I've written this out, I guess, have I assigned it like a yes and no radio already? So it will. So then this would just be dependent on this, right?
Right. Perfect.
Okay.
Yes,
cool.
exactly. And you're going to want to have a show if for that one, because you don't want to ask about their car if they don't have a car. You can do multiple levels of show if logic.
Cool.
Yeah, and by the way, it does not matter what order you put that in. So you can have it after the data type or before, so that's fine.
Show this if they got this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
How do you think of a problem that Sam might run into with what we've done so far? Try to solve before we move on. And then I'll circle back to Mariah, your question about how we would do it in the Python.
A problem with, say, specifically this car?
With high fields.
What did you say that again, Quentin? What?
Now there's some fields that won't be asked in every scenario. What problem does Sam have to solve because of that?
Is there a possibility that this line right here will show up at the same time as these ones right here, because they're both relying on the same show if?
It'll keep the order that they're in. Is that what you mean? Like it'll be in the wrong place?
Oh, yeah. I didn't know if that kept the order. Okay, that's good to know.
I'll keep the order.
The form actually asks what your debt is, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if you don't ask what the debt is because they don't own a car, then what's the form gonna think? The form's gonna in other words, your form needs an answer to that car debt or whatever that variable is, right?
Yeah.
So it needs something, but if you never ask it, it won't get any answer, and then it'll break.
Yeah, so I mean, this is short enough, could try running through and see, but I think Caroline's laid out the problem. Does that make sense to you so far, what Caroline said, Sam?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So our attachment block right now is another place that variable is required, because we're saying we're going to into the PDF because the PDF has a spot for it.
Mm-hmm.
So if we want to be able to leave that blank in some circumstances, we have to make some changes to the attachment block too.
Okay.
To both of them ultimately, but yeah. There are a couple ways to do this. There's one really nice way that I think will save you some grief as you're developing. And then it could potentially lead to some bugs that will be easier to solve, I think, that stage. So I'll just tell you the fast and easy way. Other people have learned all different kinds of ways that exist when I started the project and that did not exist. That I'm going to show you didn't exist at the beginning. So if we go up to the top of the block, we can set an option. We're going to change this default in the wizard, but we haven't done that yet. Is it the same indentation level as like the options like PDF template file and name and so on? So you can just make a new line and indentation. So it's skip space undefined colon true. And with a capital T, yeah. So now our attachment block won't trigger looking for questions that you haven't explicitly asked for.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
So let's copy that block 670 and put that in the other block. Which I think was above the.
There it is.
One more that you're going to have to make is we've broken up all those questions into separate questions. Mm-hmm. And this will tie into Mirage. So where would we change how would we change triggering those screens?
Would it be in the logic flow?
Yeah. So we're going to want to make sure to follow up questions. Oh, great. Actually, yes, I think it belongs to our neighbor. Street. So we have to get back to them. I forgot to ask them that. Yeah, no problem. Right. Yeah, so let me see. This was under, you have own home, yeah. So all the other questions that we broke up, we should have those triggered here too explicitly. And I think you've already changed them so they have users rather than petitioners, but. Yeah,
but I think Maeve had mentioned at some point that it kind of like derives itself from users anyway. So it just, I don't know if that's the actual case for me, but.
Yeah, it'll be better for you to change that so it says users instead of petitioners throughout the document. You don't have to do that one by one, by the way. You can do a global search and replace. Not inside the editor, unfortunately.
That was something I wanted to ask. Quentin, thank you so much for taking the time over the weekend. Bless you, Caroline.
Sorry.
To help with that VS Code. I'm still struggling to get it set up, though.
Oh, okay.
So maybe, yeah, that's another question that I think might be very helpful for people as well who want to edit outside and be able to do find and replace and see the white spaces and stuff.
So I know, Maeve, you had a follow-up question. We could spend some time helping Sam set up VS Code and might answer some questions. Were there other people who had questions that they wanted to get to today in the next 20 minutes? Because I don't mind taking a little time to get VS Code set up. I think you're right, as you said, that'll be helpful for everybody.
It's much nicer to edit, and as I said, I've just been basically copying and pasting the code. That's what Lily does as well, so I'm glad to see I'm not alone. But it would be nice if it was all synced.
Oh, okay, so you got the editor installed, but you don't have the syncing.
Yeah, I can't figure out how to sync it. And then you told me how to set up like the Google Drive sync, but I'm not too sure how to link that to VS Code.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? No? Okay, VS Code.
All right. So Sam, this should get you started. And I think we'll just switch Maeve to you sharing since you've gotten a little further along. But what you're going to want to do, Sam, is to install an editor called Code. Maybe we can just get you that far so you can start the installation, and then you might be able to follow along.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the loudest whisper I've ever heard.
The microphone has like high gain, I think, probably. It's like, I really want to be able to tell you what someone's saying, even if they're far away.
See you tomorrow. Okay. Okay. So are you gonna, Sam, are you gonna install VS Code? I think
you'll want to do that to do the search and replace. So
how would I do that?
get you to the right screen to download it, and then you probably can follow the installation steps, and you'll see a little bit when we're helping with Maeve, if that makes sense. If that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. How would I get to
Just
that?
get you to the right download screen.
So if you share your screen, you can just search Visual Studio Code in Google.
You guys can still see my screen, right? Yeah.
We still do, yes.
Oh. Sorry, I don't know
This?
what I did.
That's it. And you're on Mac. I didn't even notice. But, okay.
Okay. Great. All right.
So if you want to stop your share, then Maeve will be able to share her screen.
Okay. Okay. Direct. I don't know what I should be doing.
Okay, so we're going to start in your Google Drive. So I don't know, do you already use Google Drive so that it syncs to your computer?
I hadn't up until now, but then when you told me how to do that, I basically already did that with the Playground. So I created an empty folder in here just called docassembly, I think.
Okay.
And then I did the whole sync, like setting it up here on my profile for your instructions.
I realized there's like a step that I didn't tell you, which is how do you sync Google Drive to your computer? So you might not. Okay.
So I think this is all synced to that folder. So it's that's the one that's the empty folder that I had over here.
Okay. So this interface has changed a couple times. There's a bunch of choices that we could make, I think, probably. I'm just wondering if they have a button right in here somewhere to sync. Maybe under the little gear icon. But if not, we can just search for, they've renamed it. It's called Backup and Sync now. So it's a command line tool. You can, not a command line tool, you can install on your computer that copies your Google Drive folder to your computer.
So what should I do? What do I do?
Let's just search for Backup and Sync.
In here?
No, in on Google or in your address bar. That's a good question. I didn't even think about that as being something people do. I guess that's not so common anymore. Yep. So we're gonna go to the download and backup and sync.
I think you can go to the settings on when you're in Google Drive in the desktop.
Okay.
You go to the settings. It says Get Drive for Desktop.
So I think
So
you
it's
already
All
have.
backup and sync.
No, the gear icon inside your Google Drive window in the browser.
Yeah.
But I think that I'd already.
Oh, you already have it.
I think I did have it because a while back, I think.
Well, you can look at your start window and see if Google Drive or Backup and Sync is on your computer.
Yeah. So see, but then when I clicked on it, nothing happened.
Just type Drive. Oh, there you got it. Yeah.
What's supposed to happen?
It should, if you've never synced. Okay, so you should probably have. I'm not seeing it. I don't know if I can see your toolbar or if it's covered
You can
up.
see my, you can see my whole screen. So I don't know.
We can't
Oh,
see
there it is.
There
Okay.
it is. Oh,
Auto
put
hide.
your mouse down at the bottom of your screen.
Oh, right. Okay. So what should be happening?
See that little up arrow?
Yeah.
That's the back logo. So I can see it is running, but you're not signed in.
Okay.
So yeah, just sign in.
So I'm gonna sign in here.
This is your Google account. I get it. That's probably clear.
Okay. No, I don't know if this is gonna. I need to.
Yes.
Oh, I've got such secure passwords. 1 second.
You can pause your share too, so you don't have
No,
to.
no. I just need to pull it off of LastPass. Now everybody knows where to find my passwords. Okay. Okay.
It's good. LastPass is a good choice.
I use a local password vault, and I made the mistake of turning on biometric, letting me in. And then the other day I hit not the biometric setting me in, and I realized I don't remember my master password.
Oh
and
no.
It's been very sad, very,
Oh, no.
very sad. In fact, actually right now I'm resetting passwords in the background. That is my job this week.
Okay, so I've said, yeah, it's me. Sign in approved. Okay.
So you can skip this. This is to use it as a backup tool, which you probably don't want to do right now.
Just they got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I can skip.
And you can, yeah, so uncheck those boxes,
Okay.
essentially. You probably don't want it to back up all that stuff for you.
No. Nothing else here. Okay, next. Okay. I don't want to sync anything, right? What folder is this?
Okay, so now this is the direction you care about, syncing Google Drive to your computer. That's what
Okay.
will let you be able to edit in VS Code.
Okay.
So you can choose if you want to sync everything or just the docassemble
I
folder.
think just the docassemble, just that one. So
You can uncheck. Yeah, you know how to do this part.
okay, that's it.
Yes.
Okay,
Then click.
start.
If you had like a Google Pro account like Caroline has, then you'd be able to use a really nicer tool called FileStream, but we can't use that,
But
unfortunately.
you don't, so.
Okay, so now it's saying application launched. Do I have to enable this extension?
No, that's just integrates it with Chrome. I don't think. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. So now I've got the Google Drive. Oh, God. Okay.
It should show up in your quick access bar. So it
Um,
might have done, and if you just scroll down a little bit, or it might not have.
there it is. So that's it.
Empty. Okay, so this is great. So now everything is set up on your computer. So now we go back into the playground, docassemble playground.
Can you go back into this?
Have it linked, so you can click cancel here. You don't have to do anything on this window anymore. So just go back to the playground itself.
Oh, right. Sorry. Feels like tech support. Okay. And then,
And there's a little lag, so I can't see your screen yet.
oh,
There we go. All right, and now just click the sync button that I think you had found earlier here.
oh, yep. Whoops. I
Oh,
clicked
you
the
can
wrong.
sync the run. Fine. Either one's.
Okay. The sync button is basically the equivalent of the run button. Like,
The sync button will copy things back and forth, and sync and run. Well, I guess it's just half of
it's
the
half
other
of it,
half.
right? Yeah. So it's like sorry, I meant save and run. So there's a run button and then there's a save and run button. So there's a sync button and there's a sync and run button. That's what
Exactly. Yep. And the sync and run is a little finicky. So if it doesn't work, you shouldn't assume that it didn't sync. It just the timing might be off. I find it works like 70% of the time, which is a little frustrating. So if you have a big, it
sirens in the background. Is that me?
might be on my side.
I found you. Okay. How long should you usually take to sync?
You're doing the very first one, so it takes a
Yeah.
little longer. Usually take like 10 to 30 seconds.
You're gonna say minutes. I was like, so you're just gonna sit here, or and will something come up here?
Then you'll start seeing the folders populate in there, yes. So it's going in, it's a two-way thing. So you're going from from the playground to Google Drive, and then from the Google Drive to your computer. But I
Okay.
find it pretty fast usually. We're in a flight path, so now you're hearing airplanes go over our head.
And this is your proper house, like
This is a new home.
It's my proper house, yes, but we're not on our floor yet, so.
Sure. It's quite, well, that microphone is good, I guess. So. How much longer? Right.
It really does take a while when it hasn't synced before, and it's going to copy all of your projects too.
I only have one project. I should have more projects, right? Should have a project for each of the forms. What do the different projects do?
It just lets you keep the code separate. So like anytime I want to test someone's code, I make a new project to test it.
Okay.
Anytime I want to switch branches, I make a new project for that branch. And then I clean them up periodically because I find it hard to have more than like 10 or 15 projects open, but
yeah,
keep everything clean and separate that way.
Okay, so here they are.
Now, if you, most of the stuff is going to be under the questions folder that you're going to edit. Almost everything. So you can just go in and right-click in that folder.
And this is this is in the question folder, or this is the one playground that this is the one project that I was working in.
You can choose either level, depends on like what. You could even go all the way up to the DocAssemble sync folder level if you wanted.
Yeah.
But if you're only working in questions, and keeping it in questions is good. Sorry,
Okay.
I don't mean it's giving you probably. So just right-click in there somewhere. And you should have an edit in VS Code option. I use that a lot. You don't.
Oh, you want me to click on?
No, you should be able to click anywhere in the folder. Open with VS Code. It might be an option you have to turn on that I turned on. I didn't remember.
Okay.
We can do it from the VS Code side. So if you start in VS Code,
Just open a folder.
we can go to File, Open Folder. Oh, you have Open Folders right there too. Yep.
So it's this, and then that.
And then you can just do Select Folder.
And there it is.
Yes.
So now, if I pull from GitHub in DocAssemble, then it'll all update here.
Yes.
It's magic, and it's so much nicer to work in this. Like, it's first of all, you've got more space, and then you've got more.
You just have to be really careful that you remember where you were the last time you saved something.
Yes, because it is possible to overwrite your work if you're working. If it's in between.
Yeah, and it syncs everything. So if you're working in the web browser on one file, and you're working on your computer on another file, and you sync, it's fantastic to be able to use it, but you also have to pay attention to where you last were saving something, so you don't overwrite things with old-fashioned things. But the good thing though is if you overwrite stuff in Google Drive, you can click version management, I think, and then you can look at you can download previous versions and then compare them to see if I'm a big fan of saving many versions and then comparing, because I can never remember what I did last. So it's just, you just have to be careful about that, because you can overwrite stuff that you've spent a long time trying to fix.
Okay, perfect.
But if you do use the save button, and that's another place where projects can help to keep your code separate. But it syncs it, and it compares the file modification time and date. So you won't overwrite everything unless you've changed it in both places.
Yeah.
That's the part where you can get confused. If you've changed it in two places and you forgot, oh, I actually had already changed it online before I synced, and then I edited the same file locally, that's where you get overwriting your work.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for this. Is there anything else I have to do once I start editing code in here?
Nope, just save it, and that's it. Yeah. VS Code has a really nice Git integration too, but I think this workflow for editing your files makes more sense than changing your code to Git every time you make an edit.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I hope that's going to be helpful for other people as well.
So we have 10 minutes. I think we have a hard stop at 2 today.
Yeah.
What questions did other people have this week? And we didn't have a lot of office hours last week, so I'm sure people have questions.
Come on, people.
I have those other ones, but I'm going to work on them on my own because you linked some stuff in the Slack. So.
Okay, well, I know, Maeve, you had some questions about objects or Lance had started.
Yeah, Lance has a question about objects, but I think that's going to be a much more in-depth discussion.
Okay.
Basically, he wanted to say, okay, so we've got related actions as one of our questions, and the variable is related underscore actions. And there's various attributes to that, I guess. Well, it's not attributes, it's like questions related to the related actions variable. Because basically what we have is we have kind of what Sam was talking about. We have one input where we want to ask, what is the case name? What's the court? And what's the case number? I think something like that. 3 different things that we only have one input for. And we want to split those out into 3 different questions. And I think his thought about how to do that was with objects. And I'm not sure, after reading about the objects, I'm not sure if that's the best way to do it, although it might be. But as I said, I think that might be a bit more in depth.
So it's 2 levels, right? So you have related actions, sounds like there could be more than one action, and each action has 3 pieces of information that it needs to store. Yeah,
so the first question is kind of the same logic as Sam, do you have any actions related to this one in the Superior Court? Yes, no. If it's yes, then what the first action's name, number, and court, or court, I guess, I don't know. There's 3 different things. And then I guess it's going to be like an add another feature as well. Would you say that objects would be a good way to deal with that, or do you think it should be dealt with in a different way?
No, I think so, because you don't know up front how many actions they want to tell you about.
Exactly, right.
So it would be, and then each item in the list, I think, would be an object. I think that makes sense. We kind of had something really similar, and I think the same level of detail on the 209A that you could look at as a code sample, which is the other underscore cases.
Okay.
So that might get you started.
Okay.
I think that is in page 1 of the 209A. Right.
Okay.
Check. I think that's where all the questions are.
Yeah, because I remember seeing that kind of thing before. Not specific. I think I was thinking of what's it called? When you have minors, child support, maybe affidavit for child support, something like that. There was that kind of similar logic, but now that you mentioned it, other cases is probably the best one that we can have a look at. So I'll put that to him.
Actually, I'm finding the code now, so I found it pretty quickly. So I can even put in. I'll start with the code part, and then I'll put in the question card on the code channel.
Thank you so much.
Let me see. Yeah, so you could probably just copy that exact stuff and it would work for you.
Oh, fantastic. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's about it from us. I don't really have anything else right now that I can think of.
Okay, well, there's no rule that says we have to go till 2. I think it'll be hard to fit another question in.
We got 4 minutes. Yeah.
People can have a chance between this and the next meeting to get something to eat.
Maybe.
I
Yeah.
got 4 minutes. Let's go. And then we've got our next meeting at 3 after that. So I've got 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 3 to 3:30, I think.
People could nominate an idea for something to cover next week as well, or we could. I think office hours probably are a good place to keep doing office hours. But
yeah. Just from what I was looking at, kind of like I know we've done one on lists. Perhaps expanding a little bit on like that whole like groups and that, you know, maybe another session, or perhaps even already just asking if, because right now I think what we do is we have a question and then we answer the question. We don't actually learn, like that's what I was saying this weekend. I took time to actually like try and conceptualize objects in DocAssemble. So perhaps another session, something like that, you know, if there's something that we wanted to cover like that.
Oh yeah.
Obviously it requires then a lesson plan.
I have a suggestion. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go, Mariah.
If the steps that you go through all this time we're like saying, oh, look at this other person's code and we can move it into our code, or we can take this snippet and move it in, but it's not that easy. So like the steps, like you were saying, just going through the steps, like you have to think about like the things you need to think about. So you're moving in a question, but then you also need to think about the attachment code and the interview, the required question and the object block, like all of those things. I mean, maybe I'm just too basic level, but like all the things that you need to think about when you're combining code, I think is harder than it sounds. But
yeah, so like kind of
Definitely.
how do you copy someone's sample? Like what, a little bit more in depth.
what steps you have to think about when you're to make them both work when you're moving something over when you're copying.
Using,
Okay.
you know, because sometimes you don't always copy. You take, like, for example, I had to ask something about attorney, if you're the attorney or the plaintiff or the user. And I actually looked at Mark Ferrato's code, which kind of asked in a similar way, but not exactly. So kind of using the basic logic and then, you know, not having to reinvent the wheel every time, take what he's done and then work a little bit on that. So I think that that's actually a very good one. And maybe we can ask people where they've come up with examples of that, where they've actually had to do that.
Yeah, that sounds good. And well, maybe I should give people their 2 minutes now, but I like both those ideas. And if people have other ideas, share them on the chat. See everybody at stand up tomorrow.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right.
Let's call it.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
you.
Quentin.
Thank you.